NASCAR just concluded a very interesting weekend in downtown Chicago on the street course. Was it a success? Was it a failure? Let's talk about it. I want to start off with the good stuff here. So first off, on Saturday, the Xfinity race I thought was a certified banger. I thought that race was fantastic. Those cars just put on such a great show on the road courses. And, we used to have that in Cup, right? So NASCAR road racing is a really unique thing. These cars, they don't brake super well. The tires don't have a ton of grip. They have way too much horsepower. They're really clumsy and clunky to get around these tight corners. And that's what makes NASCAR road racing unique. And we've lost that with the next gen because they kind of went more towards the IMSA route with the sequential shifting and the massive brakes and the big tires. So the next gen road course product has suffered, in my opinion, due to that. It's kind of frustrating that NASCAR doesn't understand their own product, but the Xfinity series still brings the good stuff when it comes to road courses, and that was on full display in Chicago. SVG and Kyle Larson trading blows at the front of the field, passing all those passes for the leads early on. Kyle Larson, kind of got out of the car and said that SVG was toying with him and said he was so much faster than him. I think Kyle was underselling himself a bit there. I think he did a great job in making that a competitive race up front early, and then both of those guys got stuck back in traffic due to strategy. And really watching SVG and Larson, but mainly Shane, go through the field was such a treat to watch. And yeah, that was one of my favorite races in NASCAR in recent memory of any series. So great race there. And I think my enjoyment was aided by the broadcast. I thought NBC did a wonderful job. I loved the radio style broadcast with the different commentators in different areas of the track. Thank you, NBC, for treating NASCAR like a professional sport and not like a tractor pull like Fox does. Really enhanced my enjoyment of the race. I loved the enthusiasm that the booth brought, and all I can say is thank God that this race fell on NBC's part of the schedule and not Fox's. Another good thing from this weekend is when we did have racing on the Cup Series on Sunday, it was pretty good. Now, I know I just talked a bunch of shit about the next gen car and road courses, but we've had two races now in Chicago on the Cup side, and they've both been really good, and that's been due to the wet weather conditions. So I talked about how the cars have too much brake and too much tire. Well, when the track is wet and there's less grip, those problems aren't as bad, right? Those problems kind of get neutralized by the track conditions. So we saw cars sliding coming out of the corner when they tried to put the power down, and saw cars sliding going into the corner under braking, much like what made the Xfinity Series race so good. It was also prevalent in the Cup Series. And so, yeah, I enjoyed watching the racing when we had green flag racing, and we'll get to that in a minute. Another positive was Alex Bowman. Snapped a long winless streak and really had an S-tier post-race interview. If you haven't watched that, I highly recommend you do. It was really funny. So good to show his personality. Anytime a NASCAR driver displays their personality, it is a W in my book. So really happy for Alex Bowman. Seems like a nice guy. And also another really good interview from this weekend. I really enjoyed Christopher Bell's rain delay interview. He's really starting to show his personality the last few weeks. I think that's a big deal, right? Because this is a kid a guy, he's 30, right? He doesn't look 30, but I think he's 30. He's going to be up front most weeks, contending for wins and winning a lot of races in the near future, right? In the foreseeable future. So if he can kind of display this personality where he's showing a sense of humor and just, really easy to root for, if he can kind of have this personality that fans can gravitate around, he can really develop into becoming one of the main faces of this sport going forward, and I think that's a big deal. So thumbs up to Christopher Bell and his interview. Keep displaying your personality. He was kind of viewed as one of the more boring drivers on the grid, probably until very recently, but he's starting to turn that around, and I am all here for it. So now let's get into the negatives, and that would be NASCAR and how they handled the race on Sunday. And first up is start time. All right, so you have an event like this. You don't have lights on the track. You can't run it the next day. You have to get it in on that day, and you have one shot to get it. You've dumped so many resources into making this race happen. You've inconvenienced a lot of people in the city of Chicago to make this race happen, and to not give yourself the best shot to complete the race, I think is just irresponsible, right? Now, I understand why the race started so late. So the whole idea behind this event, right, is to have the concerts, which is going to draw people into that area that maybe wouldn't have gone to a NASCAR race otherwise, and then hopefully they stick around and watch the race afterwards, right? Like, that's the whole idea. I get it. Also, NBC had IndyCar. They're not going to want to air both the NASCAR and IndyCar race at the same time. That's not going to be a problem next year because Fox will have IndyCar, so they need to figure that out for next year. So I get it, but still, like I said, you've poured so many resources into this event. You can't just say, oh, I hope it doesn't rain in the afternoon in July, right? Hope is not a plan. And next year, if they do this again, I hope NASCAR has a plan. So start time, it kind of is what it is, but they made a couple of pretty boneheaded decisions on the race control front. The first being you had a caution with about 3 laps to go in stage 1. Absolutely no reason to run that to the end of the stage under caution. You wasted 30 minutes. You're talking about getting a bunch of newer fans exposed to NASCAR with that street event. The thing you can't do is run 30 minutes of pace laps. You're gonna lose them. Nope. What new fan is gonna sit through that? That's crazy to me. I cannot believe they did that. And then you had the big rain delay, the red flag. That I agree with the red flag decision there. I don't have a problem with it. But you're battling the clock to get that race. Get that race completed. I do want to give credit for NASCAR for putting that line in the sand, that 8:20 p.m. local time finish, because that has been a criticism that a lot of the teams have had, that it's kind of arbitrary as to what is too dark to race, and teams wish that they would have had a larger kind of notification period in the past, and so NASCAR gave it to them this time. So thumbs up to NASCAR on that front. But they knew they were against the clock there, and to throw the caution at the end of stage 2, there was no reason for that. You just wasted so much time when you're not going to get the scheduled distance anyway. It's just the objective should be to try to get as many green flag laps as possible, because like I said, the racing itself is pretty good, and why you would want to throw a wrench in that, I don't understand. So at some point, NASCAR has sole authority to change the rules at the drop of a hat at any given time, for better or for worse, right? This is a time and place where it could have been for better, right? NASCAR should be able to have common sense overrule the rule book in a situation like this. So yeah, I think the proof of concept for the street course has been established. I don't know whether or not Chicago is the correct place for this. I don't know how long they'll be in Chicago, but I do think NASCAR can and should be pursuing street course events, as a mainstay on the schedule. Maybe in cities that will be a little more receptive to NASCAR coming to town. But I've enjoyed the street course events, and I hope we see more of them in the future. Although everybody wants to go back to Chicago for another year and hopefully get a race in the dry weather, and I do have some concerns there that the race on dry pavement might not be as good with the next gen cars. I think we've kind of gotten a little bit lucky in the sense that the wet weather does seem to lend itself to better road course racing in this car. And if we get a dry race at the Chicago track, it's going to be hyped to the moon, right, after these last couple of years. But on dry weather, I think it might be a dud, and I hope I'm wrong. Maybe the course is bumpy enough to where guys can still struggle getting into corner entry and open up some passing opportunities for those behind them. Hopefully that's the case, but yeah, I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that. I have some serious concerns about this car on road courses. So, yeah, that's about it. Just wanted to do a quick recap. So let me know in the comments, was this weekend a success? Was it a failure? Should NASCAR go back to Chicago? Should they go? What city should they go to? Should they just ditch the street course idea altogether? Let me know down below. Thanks, and I will see you guys next time for some more NASCAR content.